Hi, I'm Christy and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm here to recommend you some books based off of my name. So this was a trend that was going around on Instagram back in November, and it was super fun to see how everybody would recommend books based off of their name, like spelling out the letters of their name. So I thought this would be just a fun and unique one, kind of a way to recommend you some books that maybe I haven't talked about as much, or that kind of don't fit anything, like they're not specific tropes or anything. They're just books that I've loved that are based on the letters of my name. So the first letter in my name is C, which this one I'm going to recommend Citadel by Claire Kent. So this book is part of her Kindled series, which is a post-apocalyptic romance series. I've talked about this series a lot because I love them a ton. Basically, this series is post-apocalyptic, very much like danger and survival stories. In this series, it's like in near future Earth, and Earth was actually hit by an asteroid like 5 years in the past, and it devastated the entire planet. Like it ended up taking out the entire continent of Europe. It led to like mass devastation, set the world into waves of catastrophes and natural disasters. Definitely just like wrecked everything, like ecologically, environmentally, all the things. So now it's been 5 years after that, and we've been catching up with different people in this world where we've been following people who live in America and seeing how their lives have changed. So the people who've been left behind or who have survived are definitely living off of the grid for the most part. People are starting to kind of come back together in these communities, try to work together, but it's mostly these like very much like isolated survival stories. So the heroine and her sister have been kind of living with a small group, have all been trying to take care of each other, when one day their group ends up getting attacked. So the sisters try to flee and run. On their way out, they end up running into this man who is of course the hero, and the heroine had actually had an encounter with him earlier in the day, so he ends up offering it to kind of like save them, rescue them, and take them away from there. So then the three of them end up traveling together, and they end up at this walled-in community that kind of takes them in. So the hero and the heroine end up sharing a night together, and then the next morning she wakes up and realizes that he left in the night to go try to save his brother before getting in with the wrong crowd. So then we get like a time jump of 2 years where the hero is now back, and so it kind of goes from there. So this one we get a bit of a second chance, and it was fun seeing how that kind of played out in this world. Like I mentioned, this series is very much survival stories, very dark, very gritty, and a lot of like high-risk dangers that the characters find themselves in. So majority of the heroes in this series, they're all very much cold, stoic, closed off, broody, grumpy. The hero in this one in particular, though, he was a little bit more talkative than some of the heroes have been in the past, so I really enjoyed that about them. We also get age gaps a lot, so this one was an age gap as well. I just really enjoyed this one. So yeah, Citadel by Claire Kent. Check out this series if you haven't yet. So the next up in my name is an H, so I have Hookshot by Kennedy Ryan. This is the third book in her Hoops series. I absolutely love Kennedy Ryan. All of her books are amazing. This entire series is so good, very traumatic, a lot of content warning as well, so definitely know that before going in, and maybe check out Goodreads. I know in my reviews I have the content warning for this series as well. So this one's actually a special edition from Bell Bookbox that they did quite a few years ago, and I absolutely love it. In this one we follow Lotus and Keenan, and in here Keenan has been kind of pining after Lotus, wanting to make her his for years. In this one we have age gap. The hero is about like 11 or 12 years older than the heroine. We also have friends to lovers, and he is also co-parenting his daughter with his ex. This one has a lot of trauma to overcome for the characters. It will definitely pull on your heartstrings and bring in all of the emotions. Kennedy Ryan is just top notch. I love her books so much. Just a master at writing. Love her books. Like she is next level top tier for me when it comes to beautiful stories. So next up is an R. So I have a Reaper by A. Zavarelli. This is the second book in the Boston Underworld series. I read this series a few years ago now, and I was just absolutely obsessed. This is a dark mafia romance series. We meet both of the characters in this one in the first book in the series. I definitely recommend the whole series, but like Reaper is next level for me. But in this book, we get to see their story unfold. They both have a very traumatic and hurtful pasts. Your heart will definitely ache for both of these characters, but it made it that much more fulfilling to see the hero get his HEA. The whole series is mafia romances, but the first book isn't quite as dark or tragic or any of those emotions that this second book is. So just know that going in, if you've read the first book and are expecting it to be on the same level, this one is more angsty, more tragic, definitely a darker story. I really like with this series how we get a ton of mafia action as well. So yeah, Reaper by A. Zavarelli. Next up I have I, so this is Ignite by Melanie Harlow. So this book is part of her Cloverly Farm series. It's in the later half of the series where we've been getting next generation stories. So this one is a small town. It has age gap. We have a single dad and we have neighbors with benefits set up. Basically in here, the heroine ends up moving into an apartment, and she has kind of sworn off men for a bit and is giving them a break when she ends up meeting the hot older guy next door, which is the hero, and he lives there with his two daughters that he takes care of. He is an ex-Navy SEAL and now is a firefighter, and so these two have a lot of fun bantering moments. They also have some funny encounters as well. I loved his daughters in here. They were so adorable, so cute. They Heroine in this one was also raised with her sisters by her single dad, who was ex-military man as well. And so they have a lot of things in common. So I loved seeing those connections with both of their stories as well. It was so much fun. Heroine here is definitely that grumpy single dad who thinks he's too old for the heroine, that he's not a good catch, that he's not good in relationships, like all of this past self-doubt he has about himself. So that kind of keeps him from getting in a relationship with her, which is when they kind of enter into this neighbor with benefits setup instead, because she's trying to lay off of men for a while and he doesn't think he's worthy of like being in a relationship. So, like, they start this friends with benefits thing first, but of course we know where it's gonna go. This one is just so much fun if you love like single dad, age gap, banteriness. Like, this one is definitely it. Next up is S. So I have A Scourge of My Heart by Lorraine Heath. This is the first book in her Once Upon a Dukedom series. This book has everything that I love. It has longing and angst and emotions and chemistry. So this one starts off with the heroine. She's needing to marry a titled gentleman to be able to inherit her beloved grandmother's seaside cottage. So each season she kind of puts herself out there and knows that it is a titled gentleman or nothing for her. So then the hero is actually her best friend's brother, and they've always had this very like push and pull relationship over the years. But one of the recent trips she ends up staying at their house, and she realizes that her and him have a lot in common and they actually get along really well. So she ends up opening up to him about her secret dreams to inherit this cottage. He opens up to her about his future dreams as well, and so they just really connect. So in here, the hero is a second son, and so he has always wanted to open his own club where it kind of caters to those that society sees as less than. So basically like second sons, ladies who are deemed on the shelf, the self-made men who have kind of gained their own fortunes, daughters and sons of those outside of aristocracy, like all of those things. He wants a club for all of those people to attend. And so we also find out from him that he has actually been pining for her for a while. He's always had a thing for her, but he knows that her dream is to marry a titled gentleman or nothing, like to be able to gain that cottage. So he kind of just doesn't put himself out there. This one does actually take a turn because the hero's father was found guilty of treason. So the entire family is stripped of their estates, stripped of their titles, stripped of their fortunes. And so his life definitely takes a turn. And so from there, we kind of see the hero and the heroine as the story unfolds. Like, as always with Lorraine Heath reads, like the synopsis is just the tip of the iceberg. There is so much more to the story. This one is just so good. I love it so much. I definitely recommend checking it out if you haven't yet. It is such an amazing historical romance with all the tension and angst and longing and pining and the sweet moments and the caretaking. So good. So next up in my name is a T. So I have Tempest by Beverly Jenkins, and this one is the third book in her Old West trilogy. This one is so good. I love a good Western historical romance from Beverly Jenkins, and this one definitely delivers. So the heroine in this one is actually a mail order bride, and so she is on the way to meet the hero, who is a doctor in Wyoming when the story starts. The hero lost his wife during childbirth 6 years ago, and so he's known ever since that he's always wanted like a good mother figure in his daughter's life, and so he ends up corresponding with the heroine back and forth through letters, and in the last one he ends up proposing a marriage with her. Beverly Jenkins historicals have some of the best, most hilarious meet cute moments ever, and this one the heroine is actually in a carriage on her way to meet the hero, and along the way she's getting close to meeting him when her carriage gets overtaken by kind of outlaws. So she whips out her gun and ends up shooting and accidentally shooting the hero instead. So automatically I loved in here how the hero becomes like a little bit wary of the heroine, and he's like, oh my god, like what am I getting myself into? Who is this woman? Like, do I know anything about ladies? So while he's a little worried and more hesitant to marry her, he decides to go along with it, enter into this marriage of convenience, because like he said, he wants somebody to help out with his daughter. So along the way he ends up realizing that he can't keep his eyes or hands off of the heroine, and he starts to fall for her as well. Beverly Jenkins just writes the best heroines, and I loved in here how this heroine is the shining example of that. Like I said, she definitely upsets the hero's mind of how like a proper lady is supposed to act. She ends up throwing people off in the community as well. She is actually an heiress with quite a bunch of change in her pockets, and so she ends up going into town, buying her own supplies, wanting to set up her own financials at the bank, and so she just doesn't take any crap from the local banker or the mayor or the grocery store owner. She knows her own mind. She's willing to take care of her own financials, and she puts all of them right in their place. She's just a powerhouse of a character, and I loved the change that she brought to the hero's life and with his daughter as well. I really did like in here as well how the hero is a widower, but his first marriage to his wife, like he absolutely loved her, and I loved how that relationship was cherished and respected. Like they weren't trying to change it or have a better love. Like it's just a different love, and love this one so much. If you haven't read Tempest by Beverly Jenkins, I definitely recommend. I love all of her books so much, but this one is definitely a fun one. So next up is Iced Out by C.E. Ricky. I know I've talked about this one a ton. It was one of my favorite reads of 2023, but I love this book, and I feel like more people need to read it because every every time I talk about it or post about it, people mention they haven't read it yet, and I'm like, pick it up, please. This is your moment. This is your time. Pick up this book. So this is an enemies to lovers hockey romance. So in this one, the two heroes are actually on rival hockey teams in high school, and then we cut to 4 years later where they are actually on the same college team now and having to work together, but they still can't stand one another. When the story starts, though, they end up going to kind of like this house frat party together, and they have this moment where things get definitely steamy between them, and afterwards their team ends up winning. And so one of the heroes is like, I feel like that was a thing, that was a moment, like since that happened, I feel like we need to keep doing that, keep giving into this like enemies with benefits situation, because it's going to help our team win. They keep winning, they keep giving in, and eventually, of course, they fall for each other as well. This one is just the epitome of hate to love, enemies to lovers setup. I love this one. Their banter, the hatefulness, kind of the hate banging. It is so good. It has an emotional connection as well. Definitely love this one. Like, pick it up. If you haven't yet, please pick up Iced Out. All right, so those are all 7 books that I have to recommend for you today. Like I said, this was just a fun, kind of unique way to give you 7 book recs that maybe I haven't talked about as often or recently. Some of these I don't think I've ever talked about on my channel because I read them back before I even had a channel. So this was just super fun to do. It kind of gives you a glimpse into maybe authors I love, book tropes I love. Like, we had historicals, we had dark, we had mafia, we have small town, we had sports, we have post-apocalyptic, like all the things. Those are all tropes and subgenres of romance that I love. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this. Let me know in the comments if you're going to pick any of these up now, if you've read any of these. Maybe if you want to give me some recs based off of letters in your name and see what you can come up with. That would be super fun as well. Or if you want to leave me like a purple emoji, like a purple heart, since I'm wearing my purple sweater today. And yeah, if you haven't done so yet, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future videos, and I'll see you in my next one.